and it's supposed to be an interactive webinar, so feel free to essentially use the chat box or the Q&A box to ask any questions if you have, or comments, opinions, whinge, complaints, anything. So, which we've done in the past. So please do feel free to use those, and we will try and respond as quickly as we can. Obviously, if there is a speaker who's presenting slides, won't be able to respond then, but the rest of the panel will be able to respond to your questions. Okay, so in preparation for this extremely interesting webinar on the impact of artificial intelligence, machine learning on workforce capability, I was actually up last night very, very late preparing for this webinar. I watched a movie called Chappie, which is about an artificial intelligence robot who, gets some intelligence, not intelligence, but also consciousness. So it's a very interesting movie, a lot of action, really enjoyed while preparing for this webinar. So, hopefully the webinar turns out good. But as you can see, we've got a Twitter back channel. Please feel free to use the Twitter back channel, and we look forward to your tweets. Okay, it is my pleasure to introduce the panel that I'm very pleased to have, because I think we've got some people on the panel who have been working in this space for a long time. So I'm going to introduce the panelist. First is Ray Greenwood. Ray, are you there? Just say hi and just introduce yourself.
Ray saying hi. Thanks, Jivan. Yep, I'm currently a machine learning architect at SAP with a pretty strong background in the HR space specifically, which is of course where we met.
And Ray has a lot of experience, and in his last job worked with Sum Total Systems, which is an LMS provider. So an excellent crossover between the world of talent management software and machine learning. So really pleased to have Ray on the panel. We have from Boston in the US, Prashanthi. So Prashanthi, thank you. A special thanks to you to participate in this panel at such an ungodly hour in Boston. So Prashanthi, hello, and if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, thanks, Jeevan, and I'm quite excited to be on the panel with all of you today. So I've been managing HR for more than 20 years now, worked for organizations such as Motorola and General Electric, and particularly for the last 7 or 8 years, I've been working pretty closely in this area, especially focused on virtual collaboration and 3D technologies, and how all of that is really impacting how HR is, evolving in terms of the value it's adding to business. So I'm pretty excited to be, part of this and talking to you this evening.
Thank you, Prashanthi. And as you can see from the slide, we've had 100+ registrations from 50+ organizations. I see some familiar names in the participants list, and I know there's a lot of expertise that exists in the audience. So please do share your thoughts in the chat and the QA panel. Okay, just very quickly, just walking through some of the upcoming events. Number one is our Learning Cafe webinar. Actually quite excited about this one too, because we are talking about content curation for learning beyond the basics. Paul from Telstra, who's actually also in the audience, will be talking about his own experience in designing and implementing content curation within Telstra, and the challenges and the opportunities that are there for learning professionals in the area of content curation. So looking forward to that. We're very excited to have Tim Dodd, who's actually the education editor at the AFR. So Tim is a journalist by training and by profession for a long, long time. So if you open the AFR, he is the person who writes and manages the news about the education sector. So we've got him really on the panel because he's going to be talking about content curation from a journalistic point of view, which might be a little bit different from what L&D folks are used to. So looking forward to that. I'm going to share my own experience about and thoughts about content curation and what it needs to do to be effective. So for those who don't know about Capability Cafe, which is, you might have heard of Learning Cafe, so this is kind of an extension, but with a difference. It is a community of capability professionals, and you might ask the question, who really is a capability professional? And if you look at LinkedIn or Seek, there are actually a lot of positions which use the word capability, and they include people who work across L&D, HR, workforce planning, capability management, change managers, people who are interested in the future of work. So essentially kind of recognizing that to make an impact and to manage capability, it kind of crossovers all these domains within HR. The way that we reach out to the audiences are through our webinars, unconference, workshops, and coffee catch-ups in different cities. So very similar model to Learning Cafe. And for those who
Yeah,
just
apologize for
sorry.
interrupting for a second here. I think folks are having a problem with the audio. They're not able to hear you.
Okay, right. Thanks. Alrighty. Can you hear me now? Audio is working. All right. Okay, alrighty. So it looks like it's okay. Looks like audio is kind of working patchily. So might want to check the connection at your end. Great. Thanks everyone for doing, and it's a great actually interactive tool to use within a webinar to to ask whether you can hear. But essentially, capability management, the fundamental principle is that a lot of us work in the learning space, which is around competencies, learning solutions, kind of knowledge. But the fundamental premise of capability is that there are two other legs of the stool, which is the tools, includes systems, frameworks, processes, and the context, which is rewards, culture, and leadership. And in essentially designing any solution, unless you are able to align all of these and design in an integrated manner, any solution that kind of exists only within learning is not going to work very well because it actually doesn't connect with the other two stools. So to deliver business results, you need to cater or look into all three aspects of capability management, without which the solution won't be that effective, right? So our definition of capability is knowledge, skills, plus the right tools, plus the context, which comprises of rewards, culture, leadership. We believe that the desired business result cannot be optimally achieved without optimizing all three legs of capability. So we've got the Capability Unconference coming up on 22nd February. This is going to be the first Capability Unconference meant for all capability management professionals, including HR, L&D, strategy, business, workforce planners. And it's going to be on the Learning Cafe model, which has been very, very successful for the past 5 years. And it's going to talk about capability. So any folks that are interested would want to definitely register for this, as there are limited seats. So this is on 22nd February next year. So in Sydney at the UTS campus. So there's plenty of time to register. Just on a personal note, for those who are interested in podcasts, and I love podcasts, so what I've done essentially is now from the podcasts that I hear during the week, what I do is I select the 5 best podcasts and give a little rating and a little summary as to why you should be listening to the podcast. Rest guaranteed that these podcasts, only those podcasts which kind of get 3.5 out of 5 are on the list, and they are anyway selected from the best sources, including Wharton, BBC World of Business, Planet Money, Alpha Chat, HBR, etc. So please do subscribe to the subscription link. And you will get, and I'll also publish this on LinkedIn. So something that I started a couple of weeks back. I'm in my 2nd week, and the response has been excellent. Okay, so let's very quickly just talk about, we won't spend too much talking about the 101 of artificial intelligence because it is something that is a really big topic. But what we'll do is, essentially see if we can just check. All right, cool. Just a slide to show you that there is a lot of depth to that. I think we're just hearing some noises, so just not sure where that's coming from. Okay. Can anybody also hear noises? Just checking. Yes, sounds like a pig. That's right. That's not me. Let me just see what's happening here. Okay. Can I just ask everybody to put themselves on mute, just in case it's something that's happening at your end? Please, thank you. I'm glad that we've got just not humans interested in the webinar. We've got animals too. Well, that's fantastic. All right. So just back to the slide is that AI is a huge topic, and we won't be able to even cover much in what we've got. So essentially, just to let you know that AI kind of happens at different levels of maturity. So when people talk about AI, they're kind of talking about different things. So right from very simple, which is about perception and notification, like web chats are around the notification and suggestion, and then you kind of go to situational awareness. So just a quick slide to let you know that there are different aspects of AI. Okay, so I think what we need to do is if we can just request you to put yourselves on mute, or the participants, that'll be fantastic. Thank you. Because we can hear some typing, etc., coming through. Okay. All right. So here are some statistics, and this is from the survey that you did. Number one was how much do you know about AI? 57% said very little, 33% said adequately, 7% said quite a lot, and 3% said don't know. So this is quite interesting, and obviously it's this is not a small sample. It's 90, so it's fairly big. So I'm not quite sure whether adequately and quite a lot. That figure this seems to be a little bit high, given that there is so much in AI to know about. So a little bit skeptical about that figure. But moving on to the next one, this is an interesting one. 62% feel that AI ML will substantially or moderately impact their jobs in the next 2 years, right? So there are 57% who said they don't know much about AI, and hopefully this webinar will provide some pointers. But 39% said moderately and 23% said substantially, and during this webinar we'll explore that a little bit further. So here's a tool which is available on ABC actually, and you can kind of put in your job, and it allows you to it basically tells you how much of what percentage of your job can be automated. So I put in human resources manager, which falls under the category business administration managers, and only 14% at this point in time is susceptible to automation. So you're okay for 86%, right? And you can see the kind of kind of activities that can be automated, and we have a slide to cover this later. But I've put another inquiry for a management consultant, right? So for a management consultant, and I think that could cover somebody like learning or HR business partners. And you can see that it has a higher content that could be automated, 28%, right? And we'll send you the link for this. It's a very good link. It's actually based on pretty deep analysis. So 72% of the work are less susceptible to automation, right? And they're not saying cannot be automated. They're just saying that it's less susceptible to automation. So you can see that even within different professions, there is quite a difference. The next question we asked was, do you feel that AI ML will partially replace HR and L&D? Only 4% said completely, which I think is, it's pretty accurate reflection. 79% said partially, 6% said won't happen, and 11% weren't sure. But 79% said partially, so I think we are all aware that automation and machine learning is going to have an impact on our jobs, and maybe that's already happening. So I think we'll do a very quick exercise. And if we look at the whiteboard that's there in front of you, you can see is just a quick question, and use your drawing tools that are available just to put a cross or a little tick to just show us how serious you are about learning more about artificial intelligence and machine learning. So 3 boxes. I just want to know the concept, want to play around with AI ML products, and want to deep dive, maybe learn. So I just put a tick mark there, and also yep, just there. That's fantastic. So wow, okay, already. So we've got a few people who want to deep dive and maybe learn programming with an A missing. Right, we'll just wait for a couple of minutes. The square is moving a bit too, so somebody's thinking outside the box. Right, so I think as these ticks build up, you can see that there is a considerable interest in either playing around or even deep diving into AI and ML. I'm not sure what the reason is, Maybe it's you're good learners and you want to learn what's happening, or you're fearful or think that AI ML is going to have a big impact. So that's good to know. So just switching back to our presentation, which should be coming up very soon. The question we asked was, how do you, what is the what aspect of HR and L&D is going to be impacted by AI machine learning? So 34% said it's going to automate administrative tasks. So that includes the chatbots, and some of them are already there. I've been using Slack of late, and it's got a chatbot which is very helpful in suggesting things which have gone wrong, or further um, help on something that a feature that I didn't use properly. Then 31% said embed learning in the workplace. So that would, kind of include recommendation engine. But I think this embedding learning in the workplace using AI is a webinar topic on its own, right? Okay, looks like the audio is lost. Just checking if the audio is okay for people. Alrighty, thank you. I'm not sure what's what's happening there. Right, so 34% said automate administrative tasks, 31% said embed learning, 30% said make recommendations about learning and roles. And I'd really be interested in hearing about what's happening in your organizations. Is the recommendations being made by your HR or learning systems about what learning to do, what roles, or is that something that's planned? If you can just chat, type it in the chat box, that'll be fantastic. So here's another one, and you can see there's actually on your screen you should be able to see the file pod, which is called the Automation Advantage. And what I'd like to say really is what I'd really like to say is to make sure that what the slide shows here is that there are the interpersonal, creative, and decision-making skills and the information synthesis skills that will be required more, and unpredictable physical and predictable physical tasks will be reduced. So I think that's what is kind of happening in terms of the statistics. The report is there. It's a 30-page report. I would really recommend that you kind of go through it. So what the survey says is that automation is going to release 2 additional hours per week for Australian workforce on an average. Of course, it's going to be less and more depending upon what kind of work you do. So just coming to this big question about how does that impact capability management, L&D, and HR. So the question is, will the competencies which are required for the organization, they're obviously delivered through people. Do we also now need to start planning for the fact that an increasing amount of capability and competencies will be delivered through artificial intelligence, right? So all of a sudden, we were all about people and their learning and their capabilities, and now we've got artificial intelligence, which is augmenting, sometimes replacing. So really, what role do we play as far as artificial intelligence goes? Do we, and it's going to have a similar impact on, probably a bigger impact on the tools that are required, and also the culture, leadership rewards. Will there be, you're not sure if will this whole rewards culture leadership be only applicable to the people aspect and not the AI aspect? So some interesting questions to talk about. But what I want to do is now I'm going to hand it over to the next slide, which is Capability Cafe's take on business adoption. And what we've got here really is our own prediction about what is going to happen in the next 2 to 6 to 8 years, right? And really, beyond 4 years, it's very difficult to predict anyway. But a few surprising things at the bottom, the purple circles, is the hybrid capability framework. What we're saying is that when you talk about capability frameworks, right now we talk about people skills, but the hybrid is going to consider not only people skills, but also AI capabilities, right? So if you require call center capabilities, it's going to be human capabilities plus AI capabilities, and that AI capabilities might increase over a period of time. And how L&D, HR kind of react to that is hybrid capabilities. Then you've got virtual personal assistants, which will very much kind of go from it's going to kind of take off. So that's a yellow dot. We've got something, which are the orange box, which is the voice assistants. That's actually going to hit mainstream business adoption very soon. I think it's kind of already will be there in the next 2 years, right? And that's going to increase. So that's kind of a little bit of a sleeper that's kind of come through because Google Home and Alexa have gotten pretty clever very quickly. Then we've got the recommendation engines, which is really about recommending skills, people, jobs, what projects people can do, learning, etc. Those recommendation engines, it'll take a little bit of time. We're kind of saying maybe 4 to 5 years before it kind of gets mainstream adoption, simply because the data that is there in L&D HR isn't that great. We don't have a huge amount of data. Now, as soon as and when Tin Can comes into play, that'll become richer, right? So the recommendation engines are ready technologically right now, but the data isn't ready that much. So, the three scenarios that are there is L&D, HR, and AI. Scenario number one is people remain experts as it is now and supported by technology. So we keep doing what we're good at. We focus on people, and that's what we do. Option two is that we still remain people except, but manage the impact of AI on people. So, training, skilling, redeployment, etc. So it kind of becomes a part of our remit in terms of managing the impact of AI on people. Scenario number three, which is the most challenging and probably the most improbable, is that we become hybrid experts, right? We actually become experts in capability, and it doesn't matter whether it sits in people or in AI, right? So these are the three scenarios, and I'd be interested in hearing what you think through the chat box, which scenario you think is going to happen. Is it remain the same? And there's nothing wrong with remaining people experts, because as you saw from the graph, is that the interpersonal skills are becoming more important. But if you are looking at impacting business results, do you go the hybrid model where you include human and artificial intelligence capabilities? With that, I'm now going to talk to Ray and hand over the presentation to him. Ray, over to you.
Thanks, Ivan. Can you just confirm my audio is okay?
Yep, all good, Ray. Thank you very much.
Super. All right. So we did a bit of a brief introduction, but just by way of repetition, my background's in the area of advanced analytics from a software and services perspective, and I worked for an L&D software specialist here in Australia, which is where I met Jivan originally, and now I focus on the application of advanced analytics to all areas of enterprise software, including the human resources domains. I'm still active in that space as well. I wanted to start out with this quote. I'll just get both of them up. That intelligent machines will replace teachers in 10 years. That was just a recent quote I read a little while ago. And we will always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change in the next 10 years. So it was very interesting looking at Jivan's chart on what's going to happen in terms of the next 2, 4, 6 years. I guess I wanted this slide to say, we can all hazard a guess, but a lot of the future is very, very unstable and unknown. So it's hard to say anything with any concrete sense, other than that there's certainly going to be substantial change. What the form of that might be over the next 5 to 10 years could vary, but we're certainly going to see some substantial innovations in the technology space that will have an impact on L&D. It's just the nature of it that is probably up for debate. I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a level set here, if you like, which was just to reiterate, and this is a slide that came from a presentation one of our customers did internally relating to a great success story that they'd recently had. So this was a really positive experience that they'd had around the use of analytics. But what I wanted to highlight was this was very, very far from being advanced analytics. This was just basic consolidated reporting and forecasting on how many HR full-time headcount they were going to require in different areas of the company. So there are plenty of organizations, although we sit here and talk about the most advanced analytic techniques and machine learning and artificial intelligence and the impact that it might have, we probably need to not lose sight of the fact that for plenty of companies, just dealing with the basics and getting some of those basics right would already be a pretty big win. So it'll be great to see the development of the advanced technologies in parallel, but we probably don't want to give up on getting some of those foundation analytics in place as well. I'm sure plenty of organizations have still got some distance to go on just being able to do reporting and basic analytics properly. That said, there's no reason we can't keep our eyes on the horizon and start thinking about the more exciting, cool stuff as well. So I thought it might be useful just to, again, put everyone on the same page or communicate what we see. We talk about artificial intelligence, we talk about machine learning. What's the distinction? What's the difference? Machine learning really is just the reality behind artificial intelligence, if you like. That said, the trend where we're evolving from that basic reporting I showed on the previous slide, we are trying to move people from systems of record to systems of intelligence. And by this I mean not just, hello, got someone's audio coming in there, not sure who that is. Anyway, we mean not just capturing SCORM data, we mean capturing that data, who did what in the course, and a heck of a lot more detail around all of their interactions with an educational experience, as well as all their other core data as an employee in the organization, far beyond the domain of just learning and development. So everything we know about that person and their experience in the company, and tying that from the individual's learning experience to an actual positive or negative business outcome. That's what's going to give us a step change into leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence in this space. This is not a trivial task, obviously. Many customers are telling us they're just frustrated because their investments in these sorts of advanced analytics may not be delivering results now, or they find it so daunting they're not sure where to start. But that said, by 2018, IDC estimate that 75% of enterprise and application developments will include artificial intelligence or machine learning functionality in at least one application, including business analytics tools like L&D systems. And by 2019, these systems should be talking to one another via APIs. That's where we start to see all of the different data sources I mentioned coming together that will enable the use of machine learning in the learning and development space. So why is bringing all of that data so important for AI specifically? Well, machine learning is really just the latest name to attach to a branch of statistics being applied to real-world problems, such as how to refine a learning experience that relies on a solid base of data in order to model or describe what patterns exist in the area of interest. It still relies on good collection of data. So why has the topic exploded and become more relevant in recent years? Well, there are a couple of forces coming together to make this more relevant in a commercial domain. For one, better models usually require bigger and better sources of data to do a better job of informing our decisions, which is why the areas of big data and machine learning are so often intertwined. And it's only pretty recently that we've had the advent of cheaper GPUs, graphical processing units, to supplement CPUs. So that's just basic computer hardware getting better, which has made this more accessible to a broader market rather than being confined to an almost research and development space. That, combined with companies collecting more and more data, has meant the models can be used in more areas of the business. There are also some algorithms that are being refined to help with the combination of more complex data and more complex outcomes, but we shouldn't allow ourselves to be fooled. Most of the actual techniques, the algorithms behind this activity in AI and machine learning are based on pretty much the same statistical theories that have been around for ages, mostly in the area of neural networks, for example. And I was quite surprised to see everyone's responses to Jivan's whiteboard. It sounded like this audience was really interested in the deeper technologies, so I might be keeping this at a higher level than could be relevant for some of the audience. Put details in the questions and we can try and get to those during the conversation side of the chat. But fundamentally, the statistical side of things isn't based on anything completely revolutionary. They're just advances in the space that we've been working on for absolutely ages.
Just a quick question.
Yep. Go ahead.
So, you're right. I mean, when we did the whiteboard, looks like there were a lot of people who kind of interested in learning more about AI and diving deep. But will it be easy for HR and L&D people to do that kind of thing, get more familiar and deep dive and program and things if you don't nearly have an engineering background? So I'm just wondering whether that jump or transition is going to be easy.
Yeah, I think you're touching on something that I'll probably mention again towards the end of the slides as well, which is that the tools should become smarter and enable the same people to currently do more of what they do, but do it with better tools. So it's not necessarily that all of the people involved in this space should suddenly learn how to program and develop their own models. There might be some of that in the really innovative spaces, but I suspect the majority of the benefit that will be gained in this space will be around the tools having been built by the normal software providers. Those tools should become smarter and embed certain machine learning capabilities that allow an HR professional to just do their job better. So I don't want to have to learn how to program something. I want the tool to tell me about the outcomes that are going to be relevant to any L&D professional.
But you reckon we haven't reached that stage where the tools are are there as yet? to?
It's definitely a maturity curve, and although there are probably some features, specifically chatbots, for example, as you mentioned, and I think we'll be talking about them later on as well, they are starting to reach a level of maturity where they are more broadly available and usable and actually useful. Everyone remembers Clippy in Microsoft many ages ago. You know, that one died a death because it just was probably a bit premature and the technology couldn't make it do what it needed to do. So some features are coming through, but I wouldn't describe it as being common or pervasively useful as yet. It's definitely part of an innovation curve.
Sure, thank you.
Yep, go for it. Okay, so plenty of companies are using the sorts of data that could be really useful to these challenges. They don't really even know where to begin, and they don't really want to waste money on innovation that can't be implemented ultimately to drive better business outcomes. Collecting more sophisticated data around how employees engage with learning systems isn't useful if those findings can't be put into action. So it's no good looking at how often does someone blink when they're looking at the screen doing an online course. If you can't actually count the blinks when they're taking a course in real time to actually give them feedback and adjust on the fly, otherwise you can only analyze what happened after the fact, which might be useful, but not nearly as useful as providing them feedback while they're actually engaged in the process of taking that course in real time. Because data mining still relies on machine learning, sorry, I should use the most current technology, still relies on the same basic process behind the scenes, whether it's HR or any other domain. We still need to gather historic data about what happened in the past. And yes, that's been expanded to include more kinds of data, more recently things like video, unstructured text, speech, audio, that sort of stuff, rather than just basic transactional data. So the data sources are getting richer and more complex, but we still have to collect that historic data about what happened in the past and tie that to a subsequent outcome of interest. For example, the way someone engages with an OH&S course, how does that relate to their subsequent safety record as an employee? We shouldn't be interested in just how did they do on the course? Did they answer the questions and how did they answer the questions? We should be relating to whether they had a successful safety record as an employee with the company subsequent to taking a particular course. So once we've gathered all of that data together, we can prepare the data, train the model, apply the model, and continually capture feedback about how well the model is performing in the real world to keep refining it over time. That continual improvement is probably one of the areas where the modern algorithms are an advance on what was historically the domain of data mining, the ability to be able to adjust on the fly.
Ray, can I just jump in again and around the question of data within HR, right? So you and I have been in this HR technology space for a long, long time, and we know that HR data doesn't tend to be as robust, strong, and comprehensive and accurate as data from other domains like finance or customer CRM, call center. Do you kind of see that improving? And the second aspect of the same question is that a lot of organizations are moving towards using a lot of point solutions, like survey could be SurveyMonkey, right? And it kind of becomes more difficult to get all that data into one place and analyze. So do you think HR data, by its very nature, structure, is going to be more difficult to use for AI machine learning?
I think it doesn't need to be, in that the challenges around collecting, aggregating, managing all of the data for an HR-specific context are no different from the challenges of, let's say, marketing or working out when a machine's going to break down in a factory. It's the same challenge over and over, which, as you describe, it's collecting the data together into one place, homogenizing it so that it can be analyzed. It's just that HR probably hasn't overcome the problem of standardizing things to the degree that it can more easily bring all that data together. It's the same process the marketing department had to go through a decade or two ago in getting their data collected. So I don't think it's an insurmountable problem, but I would say that you're right. Right now it is more of a challenge than perhaps it ought to be because of that fragmentation of the sources. So in an effort to go out and gather lots and lots of data and do more exciting analysis, let's say you engage with SurveyMonkey to collect all of that data. That's great, but you're then stuck to only isolating it within a particular area. How do I tie that data back to my HR core data, for example, or my recruitment data to see which people who were recruited through certain channels performed well? That sort of thing. It does rely on people becoming more sophisticated in how they put these systems together. And point solutions aren't necessarily a bad thing as long as they can share data, whether that's via APIs or a common data warehouse. It does need to be shared. So my background as an analytics person certainly shouts loud and clear, whenever you engage with any system, make sure that the data is open and accessible. If it's locked in, you'll never get as much value from it as you could. Okay. So finally, if we've got a model, that's great, but it's only really useful if we can implement it and actually put that into conjunction with processes and systems that an employee would see at the relevant time. So if someone's learning experience indicates that they might be susceptible to a certain kind of safety incident, following on my example from before, then providing them with a relevant warning or some micro training in the form of a short video clip perhaps that's relevant when a high-risk activity is assigned to them in the field, perhaps on an iPad or a mobile device, that's where we close the loop back to learning and start to get real benefits. And sharing those systems or embedding learning into those core operational systems is where we really start to get the benefit. To my previous point, it's not about measuring how well someone did in a course, it's how well that course impacted how they perform in the organization. So by analyzing more and more data and looking at more and more outcomes of interest, we can start to use machine learning better to get deeper insights into the people and the performance indicators in an organization that actually matter to the execs, the analysts, the managers, the ones that are proven to be predictors of likely future outcomes. That's what would allow the L&D side to fine-tune their programs in line with what those likely influences of an outcome of interest are to actually improve that process in line with, the business outcomes rather than just an L&D outcome. Now, to what Jivan shared a bit earlier, repetitive tasks are probably the best ones to target for machine learning because a consistent set of inputs can be matched to a consistent output. That's just the definition of a task that can be automated. And hopefully automating these activities, although they're not the most exciting for an L&D space, that should free up the HR professionals or other employees from routine tasks or provide recommended actions to an employee that will accelerate their path through a process. So to the example of a chatbot earlier, providing answers to routine questions or even just directing a question to the proper respondent without manual intervention to actually route their request in a particular direction. Those sorts of things can free up tasks. So they're not directly related to L&D necessarily, but if it frees up an L&D resources time to focus on customizing courses or implementing personalized learning, that's a benefit from machine learning. Machine learning can also provide guidance and suggestions in line with my earlier description of moving from an HR system of record to a more consumer-like experience where all employees get guided towards career decisions that provide better business outcomes, thinking things like Siri or when we say, okay, Google, or when we talk to the Amazon Echo, doing things through that sort of an interface rather than filling in a form. Now, even Siri wasn't perfect initially, and I'm sure plenty of Apple users would argue there's still room for improvement. So it's hardly surprising that companies like IDC are suggesting that this is very much a maturity curve, and plenty of companies are still in the early stages when the experts, the top-line companies like Apple and Google are still struggling a little bit with making this stuff perfect. We shouldn't aim for perfection. We should be getting started. I think that's the more important aspect.
And that's right, Ray. And I've just kind of acquired a couple of Google Homes, been using that, and it's quite surprised by the accuracy of voice recognition. The thing though is that it kind of goes to Wikipedia and looks for information when you ask that. So it'll be really nice if we could kind of point the Google Home, if it's in the office, to actually point to the internal SharePoint site, for example. And I'm sure that'll happen, in time. But you're right. I think the voice user interface or voice recognition interface, some people are saying, will become even more popular than using a mouse in time to come.
Correct. It's the new interface of the future, and that personalization is probably key to that. So much like your Google Home might initially go to Wikipedia for a lot of its responses, as you interact more and more, much like your Google search in Chrome or your web browser slowly learns the sorts of things you search for and provides more and more customized recommended search phrases for you, or takes you straight to those URLs quicker. As it interacts with you individually more and more and learns more and more about what you like and what you're interested in and which links you tend to follow, it should become more and more personalized. And that's the goal for the L&D systems as well. It should be providing more and more content in the way I like to consume it, when I like to consume it, where I like to consume it, personalizing it for me. All right, I might skip over just in the interest of time. I think everyone's familiar with the idea of HR moving more from pure talent management towards people management. The underlying point being that technology has the ability to accelerate this shift. And then what I wanted to highlight as an example of where this machine learning is, probably the earliest example of where this is coming to the fore in learning systems, is in just learning recommenders, which might be very simple to start with initially, but they're part of the drive of taking companies towards an intelligent, personalized, machine-driven, learning-driven learning experience. So making recommendations, as I mentioned earlier, in the right time, right place to the right people, and personalized to that person's task in context. So to expand on that, if you look at some of the research from Burson, the challenges towards people getting the best from their learning experience are often not to do with the content so much as they are to do with the context. It's finding the right piece of information out of the mountains of available information. It's about finding the right tool to consume that information in the right time and place. So it's not about giving someone a course on safe behaviors on a mining site at the time that they are first employed. That might be a good thing to do as well. We're not saying don't do that, but it might be about making sure that an actual piece of equipment physically is only able to be activated or worked on after someone has viewed a particular video, a short, even if it's just a 30-second snippet, about how to safely operate that piece of equipment. Only once they've completed that course does the equipment actually activate and become available for use, because that's the moment in time when that safety reminder is going to be most relevant to that person. And it's about saying that some people might be able to use that piece of equipment perfectly well without seeing that video, because they've used it 5 times in the past with no issues, compared to someone who's only used it once or twice and maybe didn't have as great a safety record as someone else. Personalizing that experience to individuals rather than just forcing everyone down the same path is the way machine learning is going to really help in this space. There were a couple of statistics here. Again, in the interest of time, maybe I'll gloss over them a little bit, but in essence, there are plenty of numbers to support the fact that learning, and those companies that embrace learning and have it embedded as not just a process but part of the organization's culture, tend to excel far better than those who don't. Whether that's a symptom or a cause might be to be debated, but certainly it's a presence that's consistent with the most high-performing organizations, is this embrace of learning as something that is just part of the day-to-day DNA of an organization rather than just a tick box that needs to be checked off. Just briefly, what are the barriers to learning and how do they influence L&D? Well, firstly, the tools themselves have historically been a bit archaic and a bit fragmented. Many of them are stuck in an on-premise, on-network domain. They aren't mobile. They don't integrate with the rest of the enterprise's applications. There are too many solutions. They're not comprehensive. So, yep, acknowledging that those problems are still there. People who are responsible for buying these systems are dissatisfied because there's just too much of this complexity, maybe even multiple LMSs within a business, within different departments. Too many administrative tasks within those systems to allow someone to really focus on being a strategic enabler within the organization. Everyone's busy filling in forms and doing what needs to be done from a tick box perspective again. So hopefully technology can relieve some of that. And it is easy to tag these activities as ineffective. It's easier to tag them as ineffective if it's harder to associate the activities with outcomes of success. In other words, measuring learning results can be a challenge. Results need to be tied to those business metrics I mentioned earlier. So it's not about how many people successfully completed a course. It's about what was someone's safety record within the organization after taking safety courses, or if those who did not take the course, how were they impacted in a negative way, tying to actual business outcomes rather than being discrete within the L&D domain. That's what will help remove that tag of ineffectiveness. I had a few examples just of where the technology is cropping up and what sort of thing that looks like, but again, we're probably bang on time to move on to the next section. But by way of example, there are plenty of systems, to Jivan's question, that are doing a good job of leveraging machine learning to do far more sophisticated learning recommendation, rather than just being like a generic, you did this course, you might be interested in this course as well. Just associating who did something with who did something else. That's its most basic level. That's been around for ages. It's really about tailoring those recommendations to an individual's position within the organization, their history, how long they've been with us, what's their role, really tailoring what they should be interested in to a really granular degree. Other systems that will do this would be things like flight risk predictors within HR, so working out who's actually at risk of leaving the organization and how important are they. Is that potentially relevant? Some people we're happy to have turnover. Some we really want to invest in retaining. So working out who's at risk ahead of time is a technology that can certainly help with that. And then there's the more topical things like conversational HR, having bots that can answer some basic questions on the fly and removing some of that from HR professionals. Just basic questions like, how do I use this system? What is my current status of leave or something like that? These are the basic known inputs, known output questions that could be automated with machine learning, and this is where technology vendors are all moving. Those same concepts spread throughout the rest of the HR domain as well, matching people on the basis of their resume to a particular position, finding the most appropriate positions based on their CV, standardizing job descriptions to things that mean something to the rest of the world, or analyzing the current position someone is in and what skills might help make the biggest difference to them in terms of the most successful people in those jobs elsewhere. All of those kinds of ideas are things that we're seeing crop up slowly and surely in the applications relevant to those spaces. So in summary, okay, machines learn from available data. I've underlined available because the more we can integrate different data sources, the more value we're going to get out of those systems. If we can only access a limited amount of data relating to how someone performed in a course, we're going to get limited input. If we can tie that up to how they're performing in the rest of the organization, what they looked like when they were recruited, before they were recruited even. I mean, at a certain point, you get into the real big brother space of saying, let's track what they're doing in Facebook and see how that influences them. You know, you could go too far, but certainly more data is going to give us better models. Secondly, if you can't measure the result, you can't really improve the automation. You have to measure the outcome that is right for the business, the metric that makes sense to the organization. And then finally, where is the line between creating and optimizing? And this is the one I expect to generate the most debate around this space. In terms of what machines can do for us, machines can do a great job of optimizing, of improving a current process, of helping us redo the things we've done in the past. What they're not good at, so my answer to the question, what's the space for humans if we can start to automate all of these things, machines can't create. They can't come up with something completely new. They can't innovate. Even the things that are presented as innovation within the machine learning space are probably closer to just a combination of previously successful things in a new form. They're never going to come up with something completely innovative. So the human's role is going to be more and more around the creative side of things. All right, so I think I've consumed my time now, Jivan. Let's move on, and hopefully we'll.
Thank you, Prashanti. Over to you.
At the end.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ray. I think that was really interesting, the perspective and a very good summarization in terms of what's happening. But before I get in, I just wanted all of you to quickly raise your hand if you are currently doing or have been involved in HR or learning and development, or understand HR functions pretty well. That would kind of give a. We have 3 people. Okay, so I think that's about like 50%, of all of us who are here, and I'm hoping the others have a, pretty good understanding of what's happening, and not just as it's relevant to HR, but what I would like to focus on, in interest of time, that now that we have only the next 10 minutes, is, really from an HR perspective, or kind of extrapolating this to the other functions as well. Now, with this new wave of technology and this new wave of data coming in, how do we really decode all of this, and what does it mean in terms of our roles, and how do we apply it within the context of the organization to improve the effectiveness of your particular function that you're performing, right? So here I wanted to focus a little bit in terms of the Dave Ulrich's model of HR. And again, because there are quite a few of us who are not within from HR, but also from other functions, all of us will be able to relate with this in terms of the role that your function actually plays within the organization. Of course, 20 to 30% of our jobs is to be a strategic partner where you're significantly impacting both the internal and the external stakeholders. The second role is, when there is complex change going on, either driven by the market, changes in technology, changes in the organization, how do you enable and facilitate that change? The third part is being an employee champion. So as all of this change is going on, you're not just trying to achieve the business objectives, but how are you also trying to make the experience of the employee within the organization an outstanding and a fulfilling one, right? So that's the role of an employee champion. And the fourth, not last but not the least, is the administrative expert. Now again, this, whatever the function in the organization is, there is a component of the job which is administrative. Administrative typically means, repeatable, task, which doesn't really need too much decision making. And that's where a whole lot of automation comes. Now, in the last decade or so, we've seen a whole wave of automation, especially in the form of ERPs, whether it was an SAP being implemented, PeopleSoft, Oracle, all of that being implemented. Now, what all of that did was helped consolidate data and data sources. And now what AI is doing, all of the artificial intelligence tools, is helping use that data to provide insights. And understanding those insights is what is critically important, because that is where the real value comes in terms of helping organizations make decisions. So from an HR perspective, again, what Ray has covered a lot of these tools, but just in terms of an administrative expert, increasingly what we are seeing is organizations are using chatbots. The biggest complaint for HR is, first in terms of the HR to employee ratios, we have very, the typical ratio is 1:240, but in most organizations, we actually see that there is one HR employee for 500 to 600, one HR person for 500 to 600 employees. So that makes it extremely challenging for HR to provide consistent, value or consistent experience to employees who are globally spread out. And so that's where we can actually make use of technology like the chatbots. You automate responses to policies, automate responses to employee queries, automate responses to benefits questions. And chatbots are even going to the extent of helping automate quite a bit of, the HR processes, right? Take, for instance, recruitment. I mean, imagine the pain HR goes in trying to get to a manager, trying to get their time, understanding what is a requirement, the manager is not able to articulate. You convert that into a job description, then you put it out. You're going to multiple sources, trying to get this candidate who only half meets your manager's expectations, right? And that's probably not really the value that HR folks and HR professions should be adding. So, for instance, this particular tool called Mia, what it does is, the managers are actually able to go and put in pretty precise requirements in terms of, there's a qualification I want, there's the experience I want, and these are exactly the skills I'm looking for. And that goes and searches for you across all your job sites, LinkedIn, et cetera, shortlist candidates. And what's more, it can actually ask some pre-screening questions, and based on the pre-screening questions, it brings down the pool pretty narrowly. And then the manager can, and there are other tools out there which actually, look at the candidate's calendar with the manager's calendar and actually schedule the interviews. So once that happens, then what is the role of HR in that situation? HR then actually looks at a smaller pool of candidates, and HR brings in value to see, is this person and their skills a cultural fit for the organization? What is their learning agility? Earlier to like Jeevan's point, right? There is a lot of emphasis in terms of the behavioral skills, and that's where HR brings value in terms of like, are these the right fits as the technology or everything else is changing? Is this employee's learning agility high enough or not? And that's where HR is going to be adding value. Similarly, in terms of learning and development, the Ray has again explained, but we could use this to, schedule training, capture training requirements, capture attendance, so that's one part of it. But the other part of it, technology is really making leaps and bounds in terms of virtual collaboration, and also making training, gamifying the whole training experience. In one of the recent experiences, what we've really seen is, compliance training, for instance, or CPR training. So there is this whole virtual world where you could reenact everything in a very real life scenario. So the training participants, imagine you have like, 10,000 employees globally getting into that virtual world. And the whole thing is called virtual immersion. And you're so immersed in that experience, it feels real life, that the participation and engagement is much higher. And on the other hand, 10,000 employees taking that course at the same time, or in different sessions over a period of time, it's so cost effective. So it kind of makes sense from both perspectives. And in that scenario, the role of HR is to be able to understand and help create those virtual worlds, and what and enriching the employees' experience in those virtual worlds. So HR is a change agent. I think I'll skip over this in the interest of time. So there has been, or probably I think we do have some time to cover this. So all of this, again, the role of HR as a change agent is to help redesign the workplace, right? So now with chatbots, all the assistants which are coming in, earlier to Jeevan's point, like imagine if there is Alexa, and an employee could ask a similar kind of a technology to actually, answer all the employee questions, so how can HR help redesign, the organizational workspace, right? So the whole organization design, the OD function is evolving and adapting to the changing role of technology. So the first part of that is, one, all of this technology is impacting the workforce as much as it's impacting employees, the HR employees. So our job is to kind of help decode it and simplify it for employees, right? So they're able to make sense of, okay, what is this change going on? So that's one role. And second, as the task earlier in the organizations, right, it was more based on tasks, and now it is clearly the organizations are evolving in terms of collaborative roles. So they could be a part of a function from HR, something from marketing, something from sales, all of that being consolidated, and an application like Alexa doing, or something in virtual collaboration doing. So it's more based on the end-to-end value add of a particular function, and it's going to move away from being specific silos designed around tasks. So I think within HR, that's going to be a very, very exciting time for us to get ahead of that and see how those networks could be used to design an organization that will, help strategically contribute to the organization's goals. So what does all this mean? As again, like as technology keeps coming, there is a lot of fear. So is it going to really be eliminating jobs? So there's been a recent survey in 2017. So it's very clear that it's not going to be eliminating jobs. It will eliminate some of the tasks of our jobs, and it will help create new jobs. So what are the skills that are needed to be ahead of this, right? So leave administration to AI. Let it perfect it, let it make it efficient, let it give employee that experience of consistency, so and two, as HR professionals and, professionals in all other functions, we need to be able to use all of this data and the insights that the data is providing to help make decisions. What are those actionable insights coming out of all of this data? Three, treat intelligent machines as colleagues. There is no need to raise the machines because obviously, they're a lot more efficient than the human mind currently is. So, we could use them to help us be a lot more efficient in our jobs. Work like a designer. Think about the future, have a vision for what your organization culture would look like with all this technology. How would you, what is the information that the CEO needs, right? Your CFO needs, what the marketing folks need, the supply chain folks need. What is the information that they really need? And from a people perspective, how do you then help them get that insight, right? And then you're designing the workspace to fulfill that requirement. And then lastly, help build social skills and networks, because that is going to be the most important skill in the future, is making sure that you have all these collaborative networks and they are adding value across the organization. And lastly, explore early. And to that extent, Jeevan, thanks for organizing stuff like this and helping people get ahead of the curve. Adopt new performance indicators and help the organizations drive adoption. So you could be at the forefront of making this change happen within the organization. And then finally, from an administrative perspective, help develop training and recruitment strategies that will use and integrate all of this AI and help deliver value at a broader level. So thank you, and if you have any questions, please keep adding that to the chat.
Great, Prashanti. Thank you very much. I mean, that was an excellent and a very positive message. But listen, to all my participants in the webinar and to the panelists, we did try to pack in a lot, and this is a vast topic, and really, one webinar couldn't, or will not do justice. But the whole idea was to expose you to as many different thoughts and concepts so that you can go off in your own time, explore more. So we had two excellent presentations from people, very much working in this space in the intersection of AI and human resources. So Ray, thank you very much. On your screen is, and also Prashanti, thank you very much. On your screen is, a little poll. So if you can just mark that, it just gives us feedback about how we've done and how to improve it. Hope you can join us for the content curation presentation. And look, we will be focusing a lot on automation in Learning Cafe, but and Capability Cafe. It is going to be a big theme for us in the unconference coming up in Sydney on 22nd February. So we hope to see you there, and it should be a really exciting event. So panelists, thanks once again. Really enjoyed your presentation. See you later.
Thanks, everyone. Catch you later.
Thanks, everyone. So just to disconnect, if you just close your windows, that'll disconnect from the app.